Okay, ready to dive in? Ever feel like you're kind of stuck in your own head? Same thoughts on repeat?
Oh, totally. Like a broken record sometimes.
Well, this deep dive is all about getting unstuck. We're looking at Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen.
Intriguing title, right?
Right. It's like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to believe then? But he makes this really interesting point. He says, it's actually our thoughts, not the outside world, that cause most of our suffering.
It's deceptively simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
We go through life assuming our thoughts are facts,
Mhm.
like a direct line to reality.
But he gives this example, like imagine two people in the same coffee shop. Same coffee, same music, same everything.
Okay, I'm with you.
And one of them is totally stressed out, like lost in worry, right?
Yep.
And the other person is just totally content enjoying the moment.
Same reality, two totally different experiences. It's like he's saying our minds create this illusion of reality.
Yeah, it's all filtered through our own like lens of thoughts.
Exactly. And those thoughts are powerful. They directly shape how we feel in any given moment.
It's so true. Like, you know how one little thought can spiral into this whole mood?
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what he's talking about. He even says we can only feel what we are thinking.
He does. And it's such a profound yet practical way to look at it.
Yeah, like he has this other example where he talks about someone who like hates their job, which, happens,
Sure.
but they feel that hatred even when they're at home with their family, nowhere near work.
Right.
So it's not the job itself that's making them miserable in that moment. It's the thought of the job.
It's the thought. He nails it with that example. It reminds me of that Zen story, the one about the monk and the empty boat.
Oh, I love that story.
It illustrates this perfectly. So picture this monk meditating peacefully on a lake, and suddenly, bam, another boat slams right into his.
Oh, no.
Right. And the monk is understandably upset, ready to unleash some serious Zen fury. But then he looks closer, and he realizes the boat is empty. No one to be angry at.
It's such a good reminder that we can't always control what happens, but we can control how we react.
Exactly. And that's where Nongen's distinction between thoughts and thinking comes in.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that. What's the difference?
So he says thoughts themselves are neutral. They just kind of prop into our awareness, almost like raw energy from this like universal mind.
Okay, so what's the problem then? It's not like we can just turn off the flow of thoughts, right?
Right. And he's not saying we should. It's when we engage in thinking. That's when things get messy. Grabbing onto those thoughts, overanalyzing them, judging them, that's what he's talking about.
So it's not the thoughts themselves, it's what we do with them.
Yes. He even compares it to a thought speedometer. The more we overthink, the faster it spins, the more stressed and anxious we get.
That makes so much sense. Think about those times when you've been totally blissed out versus like crazy stressed, how much thinking was happening in each.
Right. When we're truly present, joyful, there's often very little thinking going on. We're just immersed in the experience.
So then he's saying those positive emotions, that's actually our natural state.
Exactly. You said this great analogy comparing it to a baby. A baby's natural state is joy, pure and simple. It's only later we learn to block that with all our thinking.
And speaking of obstacles, Ninglian dives into this whole thing about goals. Like, there's some we really crave, and others, they just feel heavy, you know?
Oh, absolutely. He talks about goals driven by desperation versus inspiration. Those heavy ones, those are often the desperation-driven kind.
So it's like, I need to make X amount of money so I can then feel secure, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's fear-based, coming from a sense of lack. The goal isn't really the desire, it's the feeling they hope it will bring.
Like chasing a means to an end instead of something, I don't know, more intrinsically motivating.
Yes, and that's the beauty of inspiration-driven goals. They're aligned with your passions, your values. They feel light, joyful. It's like, think about it this way. What would you create if you had unlimited resources, no expectations, no need for anyone's approval?
Wow, that's a good one. It makes you realize how many goals are just like shoulds we've internalized.
Right? It cuts through all that to help you connect with what truly matters. And it's interesting, he links this idea to the concept of unconditional love.
Unconditional love, like how does that fit in?
Well, he learned about this from his girlfriend, who showed him that true love, it doesn't come with a because.
It's not, I love you because, it just is.
Exactly. No conditions, no expectations. Loving someone for exactly who they are. And he connects that to creation, to how we approach our goals, what we bring into the world.
So there's a connection between how we love and what we create.
He calls it unconditional creation, creating from pure joy without ulterior motives or needing validation. And when we do that, those positive feelings we're always chasing, they often just show up naturally.
It's like we're so busy chasing the feeling, we forget to enjoy the journey.
It is. It's about falling in love with the process, the act of creation itself, not just the end result. But I'm sure you're thinking, okay, this sounds great in theory, but how do we actually shift our lives like this?
Right. Our brains love what's familiar, even if it's negative. It's like breaking any bad habit. It takes time and effort.
Absolutely. And it's okay to feel weird about it. Don't beat yourself up if you slip back into old patterns. The key is awareness.
So how do we cultivate that awareness? How do we start noticing those thinking preps and choosing a different path?
He talked about activation rituals, basically morning routines to set a positive tone for your day.
So starting your day with intention before the overthinking mind takes over.
Precisely. Meditation, journaling, time in nature, anything that helps you connect with that inner stillness.
It's like setting your internal GPS for the day, charting a course for peace, presence. And speaking of GPS, Nguyen actually uses that analogy to talk about intuition. It's like our intuition is this inner guidance system, always pointing us in the right direction, even if, like, our logical brain doesn't get it.
Exactly. And just like, a GPS might take you on a back road you weren't expecting, our intuition might guide us in ways that seem at first counterintuitive.
But they lead to those amazing destinations. It's about trusting that inner voice, even when it seems, I don't know, maybe a little crazy. Ever had that, like, ignored your gut and totally regretted it?
Oh, countless times, right. It's like we let the overthinking mind drown out that inner wisdom, and we end up, well,
Not where we want to be. So how do we strengthen that trust in our intuition, especially when it's saying the opposite of what our, like, logical mind is telling us?
Ningian talks about surrender, letting go of that need to control every little thing, and trusting that there's something bigger guiding us.
Surrender is so powerful, but so tough in a world that's all about, like, hustle and figure it out yourself.
It takes practice for sure. It's about creating space in our lives, space in our minds for that wisdom to come through, quieting the noise, the chatter, so we can hear that inner voice.
So not about silencing our thoughts completely, but making room for that deeper knowing to emerge.
Yes, it's finding that balance, thinking into and non-thinking, effort and de-surrender.
This has been amazing. So it seems like Nongen's book, it's about so much more than just our thoughts. It's about connecting with that deeper wisdom within us, that inner GPS, guiding us towards peace and fulfillment, maybe even a little magic along the way.
Beautifully said. And I love how he ties it all together by saying, you know how in physics, everything comes from nothing?
Yeah.
He says our minds need that space, that emptiness, for true creation, true insight to happen.
Wow, I love that. Like creating a void so the good stuff can rush in.
Exactly. And that void, that space, it comes from non-thinking, from surrender, from trusting that bigger picture.
So if there's one thing you'd want our listeners to walk away with from this deep dive, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to create space. Space for silence, for reflection, for really listening to that quiet whisper of your intuition. You might be surprised what you find there.
Such great advice. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
My pleasure.